bizarro world that we live in today, where up is down, good is evil, and truth is fiction for anti-Second Amendment progressives. Where activists, writers, and politicians operate with an attitude of absolute moral superiority according to their own bizarre code. With these three main tenets they make their stand. 1. Make up history. 2. Propose ineffective remedies. And 3. Mock proven solutions. First, they flood the internet and social media with allegations that the Second Amendment either does not protect an individual's right to keep and bear arms, or that that right is restricted to single-shot flintlock muskets. The second tenet that they retreat to is that all good people should respond to a mass shooting by supporting legislation that wouldn't have prevented that mass shooting. Every time there is such a massacre, the anti-gun movement trips all over themselves, offering gun control proposals that are the functional equivalent of trying to respond to a flu outbreak with erectile dysfunction medication. A perfect example is after the Orlando shooting, they filibustered the floor for 15 hours to ensure that they could propose a ban on people on terrorist watch list from obtaining weapons, expand background checks to gun shows, and internet sales. Neither of these proposals would have prevented the massacre itself, as Omar had been removed from the terrorist watch list and had passed a background check to purchase his weapons. They go to their solution, or their illusion that there is a single public policy answer. They never discuss the attempted mass shootings that have been stopped by our civilians with guns. Here bizarro morality rears its head. Claims that armed citizens could potentially stop a killer are invariably met with howls of rage from the left, yelling, "How dare you introduce more guns into the discussion?" I ask, is it unreasonable to believe that a concealed weapon in the hands of a competent citizen could save lives? Something has clearly changed in America, but that something isn't easier access to guns. Americans bought millions more guns in the last decade, even as gun crime declined sharply. Americans have witnessed what has happened to their gun-controlling European allies, and they know that making it more difficult for law-abiding Americans to defend themselves will not make the problem go away. This group will go down the way jihadists, radicals, and extremists always go down, at gunpoint, yes, even here at home. It is right to protect yourself and your fellow citizens from evil men. It is wrong to deprive yourself and your fellow citizens of the weapons that offer such protection. This is a real thing, not a desirable reality. I believe that the right to own a weapon for self-defense is every bit as inherent and unalienable as the right to speak freely or practice your religion. It's a co-equal liberty in the Bill of Rights, grounded not just in the minds of the founders but in natural law. The forms of gun control proposed after each mass killing represent a collective punishment. The rights of the law-abiding are restricted, with no real evidence that these alleged common-sense reforms will prevent future tragedies in any meaningful way. They don't care about restrictions on gun ownership, because they don't view it as an individual right, much less an unalienable one. It is more than an embarrassment, it's a sort of constitutional quirk that should be limited or confined as much as possible. It is a privilege to them, not a right, and can be heavily regulated and restricted without doing any violence at all to individual liberty. I say it's straight malarkey. Here I believe LS the fix regardless of whether you view gun ownership as a right or a privilege, a person can demonstrate through their conduct that they have no business possessing a weapon. Felons, the dangerously mentally ill, and perpetrators of domestic violence. These people have not only demonstrated their unfitness to own a weapon, they have been granted due process to contest the claims and charges against them. There's no arbitrary state action. There is no collective punishment. There is rather an individual constitutional state process, and the result of that process is a set of defined consequences that includes revoking the right to gun ownership. Time and again mass shooters give up warning signals, they issue generalized threats, they post disturbing images, they exhibit a fascination with mass killings. But before the deadly act itself, there's no clear path to denying them access to guns. Though people can report their concerns to authorities, sometimes those authorities fail. What if there was an evidence-based process for temporarily denying a troubled person access to guns? What if this process empowered family members and others close to a potential shooter? Allowing them to do something after they see something and say something. Some of the best forms of defense against mass shootings is an empowered vigilant citizenry. It's called a Gun Violence Restraining Order, or GVRO. I heard about this when I moved to California, and I think it has potential. If it were to permit a spouse, parent, sibling, or person living with a troubled individual to petition the court for an order enabling law enforcement to temporarily take the individual's gun right away, it should contain the following elements. 1. It should limit those who have standing to seek the order to a narrowly defined class of people, close relatives, those living with the respondent. 2. It should require petitioners to come forward with clear, convincing, admissible evidence that the respondent is a significant danger to himself or others. 3. It should grant the respondent an opportunity to contest the claims against him. 4. In the event of an emergency, an order granted before the respondent can contest the claims, a full hearing should be scheduled quickly, preferably within 72 hours. 5. The order should lapse after the defined period of time, and less petitioners can come forward with clear and convincing evidence that should remain in place. The concept of the GVRO is not substantially different from the restraining orders that are common in family law, and is far greater, easier, to explain to the public than our nation's mental health problems. Moreover, the requirement that the order come from the people close to the respondent, and that they come forward with real evidence, minimizes the chance of bad faith claims. The great benefit of the GVRO is that it provides citizens with options other than relying on, say, the FBI. Just since 2015, the Charleston church shooter, the Orlando nightclub shooter, the Sutherland Springs church shooter, and the Parkland school shooter each happened after federal authorities missed chances to stop them. Those keeping score, that's 4 horrific mass shootings in 4 years that federal systems failed to stop at a cost of more than 100 lives. In other words, proper application of existing policies and procedures could have saved lives, but the people in federal government failed. So let's empower different people. Let's empower the people who have the most to lose, and let's place accountability on the lowest possible level of government, the local judges, who consistently and regularly adjudicate similar claims in the context of family and criminal law. It recognizes both the inherent right of self-defense and the inherent right of due process. It is not collective punishment, it is precisely targeted. When the individual citizenry are vigilant and individual government officials are not, then it is time to consider different measures. It's time to consider rearranging the balance of power. I do not pretend that the GVRO is the solution to mass killings, because there is no solution, but it is a tool. Until I am persuaded otherwise in this bizarro world, I believe that a restraining order can give a family the power federal incompetence has taken away, the power to save lives.